Hello there guys, this is Dino Man here, and I'm coming to you with another review. As said in the last one, today we are reviewing the 2007 Safari Ltd Stegosaurus. So without further ado, let's get into it. First, the pose. Now it has a very simple pose. It's in a walking pose with 1 foot raised off the ground. The head is looking ever so slightly to its right. It's got its mouth open, so it's obviously calling out. So maybe it's like walking and then like it's calling out. Maybe it's got a baby or something, it's calling to the baby. Maybe there's a nice lovely bush right here and it's just walking along and it's like, oh look, a lovely bush, I think I'll eat that. Nom 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 nom. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that you could use this pose for. It's not overly dynamic, but it's also not too simple either. It's a very nice medium between the two. It's a very nice pose. It's got a nice little flick in the tail at the very tip. Not so much of a curve that I think it's unnatural, so I think it still works pretty good. The tail is raised high. So overall, I'm going to give its pose a 9 out of 10. I don't know what it is about it, but it's very, very pleasing to me. How it's not too overly action-packed, but it's also not too simple. It's kind of like a good medium ground in my opinion, and I really like its pose a lot. Next up, the paint job. Probably one of the most striking things about this figure is its paint job. In the words of Bionicosaurus, this thing is ketchup and mustard. I mean, it's got this gorgeous yellow plates. It's got this nice deep dark red on the back with this nice blood red on the back, and it's got a brown underside, a little bit lighter brown on the very tip of the belly. It's a very standout color scheme, and it really does stand out on your shelf. But the thing is about the color scheme is it's not so standoutish that it looks completely unnatural. Now granted, it is a little bit unnatural, but it's not so incredibly unnatural that it looks weird. It's a very nice, again, it's a nice middle ground between looking very nice, being very brightly colored, but not so brightly colored that you just look weird. Which is it's a very impressive thing for a figure to do that. It also has a yellow eye on its teeny tiny little head. Also for the paint job, I'm not sure how well it'll pop up, but like in the cracks, in like his wrinkles and everything, he's got like this sparkles. I don't know how well you can see that, but he's got these sparkles that are like inside the cracks and folds of his skin, which is interesting. Very, very interesting. It kind of also helps give him a standouty look. I'm not sure if I like that a whole lot, but I mean, it's not incredibly noticeable, and it's definitely not the first thing that you notice about him. So I give his paint job a solid 9 out of 10. It's a really good paint job in my opinion. Brightly colored like I like to see, but not so brightly colored that it just looks weird and bizarre. I love it. I love its paint job a lot. Next up, detail. Now this figure unfortunately does not have individually sculpted scales like Safari do nowadays, but this was made 10 years ago. So, I mean, what were you really expecting? It's got a bunch of wrinkles and stuff. It's not as defined wrinkly as their Hypocrosaurus. It's a wrinklage that looks a lot more natural. It's got kind of decent detail, not superb. It's got nice little scratches and scuffs all along the plates, which look nice. It's nice weathering because they wouldn't be perfectly smooth because this creature existed out in the wild. It's got the same kind of thing going on, especially at the base of the plates. Got some nice wrinklage in there. You got the toes, nice bunch up of skin where they meet the ground. And then, probably the most impressive thing about detail is its tiny little head. I mean, That thing is incredibly small, as it should be. I mean, a Stegosaurus was like the size of an elephant, and its head was like 8 inches long. That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but it shows you how small this thing's head was. Here is a penny. Its head is smaller than a penny. It's not even the same size as the penny. It's smaller. It's like a quarter the size of the penny. Whoa, I just dropped the penny. That shows you just how tiny this thing's head is. Yet they were still able to get some detail. They got some nice, really small little plates. They painted the eye, and the eye doesn't look derpy or anything like that. It's got this nice, alert look to it. Same thing on the other side. The other side's not quite as good, on mine at least. It's got nostrils on that side. And on that side-ish. The beak is pretty well defined as well. Also, I'm not sure how well it's popping up, but they did also put an ear on his tiny, tiny little head. This is the only way I can get my camera to focus on it, but you can kind of see that it has a tiny little tongue in there as well, which is very, very impressive for them to get on such an absolutely tiny, tiny little head. So overall, I'm going to give it a 8 out of 10 on detail. It doesn't have individually sculpted scales, but Safari weren't really doing that back then. And its detail is by no means not impressive. Now, I've been just praising this figure so much throughout this video, but now we get into paleontological accuracy, which is where it begins to fail. Well, let's start off with the most iconic things about Stegosaurus, the plates and the Thagomizer. Yes, this is called a Thagomizer. In case you weren't aware, it's an awesome name. So the plates seem to be pretty nice in size. They're very, very small at the beginning of the head. Then they get bigger and are biggest over the hips, and then get smaller, but they don't get as small as the ones on the top of the head, which is important. It wasn't like even on both sides. However, even though that is accurate, they gave it too many plates. I count 25. I believe the most any Stegosaurus ever had, they had between about 17 and 22 plates. So 25 is a bit too many. Now, I won't mark it down incredibly because there is something called individual variation, which basically means just like how you're not the exact same person as your friend, both in the way you look, mostly in the way you look, that's the important thing. Not every single individual is exactly the same, so I think it's completely possible that there was indeed a Stegosaurus that possessed 25 plates on its body. So it won't get marked down incredibly too bad for it. And I mean, if they just took off like a couple plates up here at the top, then it would probably be a lot better. But so it won't get marked down too bad for that. And then we move on to the back, the Thagomizer. There are 4, which is accurate, but the thing is they have them in a V shape. Not sure if that's focused. There we go. Now it should be focused. They have them in a V shape. No. How is this thing supposed to attack its predator with them pointing upwards? I mean, I guess it could like swoop down, but that would be pretty darn hard. So here we have our completely random predator that is going to attack this Stegosaurus, and as you can see here, the spikes, when swinging them side to side, don't work all that well when they're pointed upward. They kind of just skim over the top. Now, it could do a swoop down and then have them go in horizontally and then stab into its victim, but that might be a little harder for it to do, and I don't even know if the tail was that flexible. They really should be pointing out to the side in the first place. That way it could just swing it from side to side and stab this guy wherever it wanted to, so that way he dies or at least leaves it alone. And then moving down to the feet, the back feet have 3 toes on them, each clawed, which I believe is accurate. But then when we move on to the front feet, oh, there's a piece of hair right there. Let me get that out of the way for you. So It has 4 toes, all of them hooved. No, it should have 5 toes, and only the innermost 2 should have hooves on them, not all of them. Same thing on that foot as well. So that is unfortunately an inaccuracy. And this foot is kind of rotated outwards a little bit as well. Like, that's him facing basically forward, and you can see how it's kind of rotated. I'm not sure if it could do that. Maybe. But I don't know. Now, the tail is held high, like it should be. Like on the Papo Stegosaurus or the Jurassic World Stegosaurus, they kind of swoop down, which is not good because doesn't look very muscular. It had a very muscular tail, as well as the anatomy with how the tail connects to the hips and everything, and how flexible the tail was in the first place. Seems that like a Stegosaurus that had its tail drooping down had a broken tail. Like, its tail could not accomplish that pose even if it wanted to. And then moving on to that, the tail is also far too short. It should be more like that long instead of this teeny. It's got like a short little ceratopsian tail. Now granted, it does look a bit more muscular, but it really should be longer. And then moving on to the head, the neck in particular, I believe is too short. It should be more about that long. Like, it should go the length of the head, and then there should be the head. And also, it needs to have a throat sac. I don't think they discovered this at the time, but Stegosaurus had a very big kind of like throat sac right underneath in this area, nice right underneath his throat, that had very thick scales all over it. So that is unfortunately another inaccuracy. So overall, I give him a 5 out of 10 for accuracy. He does not score incredibly high. Now granted, some of the things they didn't know about when he was made, but still, one of the things I do on my channel is I compare for all things to the standards that we have now, and he just doesn't stand up in accuracy really at all. It is kind of sad, however, that this is still, I believe, the most accurate Stegosaurus that we have out there, and he only scored a 5. So, I mean, if you know of a more accurate Stegosaurus, please tell me down below in the comments. But I think the company should make a new one, considering that, again, he doesn't score all that high, and he's the best one we got. Yeah. So now, before we figure out its overall score, let's figure out just how big it is. So, this figure is about 6 or so inches long. In centimeters, that is about 15 centimeters. He is, at the top of his plate, about 3 3/4 inches tall. About, 9.5 centimeters tall. Now, first up for size comparisons, here is the 2017 Safari Ltd Feathered Velociraptor, which kind of gives you an idea of how big this one is. It's taller, but not longer. Here it is compared to the 2015 Collecta Nasutoceratops. Next is a figure that also has some red and yellow going on. The 2005 Carnegie Dylong. Now for this figure's overall score. I once again give it a 7 3/4 out of 10, or a 7.75. He scores really high in basically all the categories, but his low score on accuracy is what really has unfortunately brought him down. But still, he is a great, amazing Stegosaurus figure that is kind of underrepresented. Like, not a ton of reviews have been done on him. Bionicle did a review on him, but I don't really know about anyone else. I definitely think that he should get more representation because despite some of his accuracy flaws, he is a amazing figure for what he is and when he came out. So, that is it. That is my review on the 2007 Safari Ltd Stegosaurus. My next review will be on the 2008 Safari Ltd Postosuchus. So I will see you all then. Dino Man,